This is Adam from Beyond Medicine. And today I'd like to talk about Immortality Gaia. Immortality Gaia. Now, this is possibly my boldest project to date. So, in terms of ingredients, it has 30 levels of immortality. So, compared to stuff like Vishnu has 15, Asgard has 20, and Gaia has 30. So it's quite a step up from the other ones. But I wanted to set it apart from all the other ones. And it really is kind of like it completes Asgard. It's designed to be taken in conjunction with Asgard or just individually. It's like it's a very full frequency. My intention behind it was to really to bring the fullness of earth into a substance and mix it with immortality. But it's a lot of the ingredients are designed around health and preservation as well. So the idea behind Gaia is that it'll actually bring the totality of the elements that are in your body back to you as living things, so that we can kind of redraw ourselves, repattern ourselves, as it were. Now, obviously, this is a massive project, and I thought long and hard about what I would actually put in there. And the fundamental part of it was made up of four mineral components, because this would really represent the totality of the periodic table. So I put in Himalayan salt, Kalahari salt, something called calcine, which is an ancient peat lake and contains a lot of the minerals of the earth. And then shilajit. Shilajit's known as this resinous substance that comes from rocks in the Himalayas and is thought to contain large quantities of the core elements that are essential for human life. Now, when you look at a human body, we have the macro elements, the calcium, the magnesium, the potassium, the sodium, the iron. And then we have this whole range of tiny elements that we need tiny amounts of. Some of them are even poisonous in large quantities, but like in the trace element level that we get them in our body, they're useful in some small way, whether it's gold or silver or whatever. These things are all used in the body as part of our biochemical toolkit or like palette. So when we want to paint something, we've got all these elements represented in us, and then we use that to basically create structures, cells, biochemical processes which allow life to continue, and just the matrix where we're in the entire human biome. And that's not just us. I mean, there's us, but when you look at the stomach, there's millions, billions of little kind of creatures that make this whole existence possible. So it's not just us we're looking at the entirety of what goes into us. And we very much represent a microcosm of the macrocosm. So like, as we are whole biospheres, worlds for a whole host of little, bacteria, and the good ones have been well advertised by acidophilus, and they are having a healthy biome, but there's a whole lot of bad stuff as well. But somehow in this, there is this homeostasis where life goes on. I mean, in the healthy person, when we're out of balance, we might need to add certain things. And this is the value of stuff like probiotics, because you're adding the good bacteria and they help to bring everything back into balance. But when you look at a section of, say, the stomach or the intestines, it looks like, this bacteria or this creature, eats this and then feeds it to that creature, eats it and then passes it on down, and then it comes out as waste eventually. But we represent a whole world in a sense. And what I've tried to do with Gaia, Immortality Gaia, is to almost replicate this on an elemental level, to give it back to us, to remind us that we are these sovereign beings, and we exist as, whole worlds in ourselves. And the more we can see ourselves as part of a bigger community, a bigger world, in terms of the world as being a part of it, the more we can really be here and be present and incarnate, which is obviously what everyone, and everyone talks about, everyone wants. But, the truth of the matter is we spend a lot of the time worrying or thinking or fantasizing about the future, or worrying or dwelling on the past. This is just the truth of it. This is human nature. But if we were to be truly present and truly here in this moment all the time, what would it look like? It would look like we were very deeply embodied. It would mean we could spend a lot of our focus and attention on anything we wanted to do at any moment. And we could have a very powerful experience of life, and we could actually get accomplished what we always dream about accomplishing. And I would argue the reason that a lot of people's dreams don't come true is that, that we can only apply maybe 15-20% of our attention or our focus or our will on anything, because so much is, in the future, in the past, or in memory or fantasy. But if we were to really bring it all home back to the present, and we were to be truly embodied, to really dig deep into the earth, instead of just walking lightly upon the earth, if we were actually to dig our feet into the earth and feel our connection to the earth on an elemental level, and there I mean like a mineral level, then we could begin the whole process of really being in our body. Now, a lot of people who took the Gaia said that they felt like it was coming home, felt like they were truly incarnated in this body for the first time. And that just felt fantastic. It was like they almost woke up to themselves. Like, my question to them was like, where were you? And they were like, I don't know, but I'm here now. I'm back now. So whether we're going on flights of fantasy or dreams or existing in other realms or dimensions, we're not completely present. What this does is it really brings us back here to the earth, and to a realization that we are on this precious planet, and we're part of it, and we're part of its health or its lack of health. And if we truly embody here, we can actually really do a lot to move ourselves forward, and create the world we really want to. The whole idea of heaven on earth is an ideal, but what does this actually mean? First, I would argue, in order to have that, you almost have to have earth before you can even think of heaven. And the whole concept of earth is being very much in the earth, swimming in the oceans and the rivers, and like getting your hands dirty in the soil, and actually just walking barefoot, just being here completely, really marveling at the treasure of flowers and trees, and just looking at what we have. So in that vein, I've included various other things in Gaia. I've included some, I've tried to represent earth, fire, water, ether, and air, as much as possible. For the water components, I've taken some waters from some holy lakes, and I've included these in the cook. I cooked up all the substances together in the solvent that brings things to life. Earth, I've taken some stones from holy places, which are sandstones, and I've incorporated those. For the fire element, I burnt some wood and some moss from these sacred trees I have access to. I've just a small amount to include the mineral component. And for the air, I visualized like the eagle's claw, and I projected that into the mixture while I was doing it. It was like very much a mental projection into the mixture. And then for good health, I included buchu, which is known for its immortality. It's considered by the Bushmen the essence of immortality. It really boosts the immune system, the kidney chi, the life force. And then I put moringa, which is an Ayurvedic version of that. It's also supposed to make one stronger and healthier. Then I put in hibiscus, which is good for psychic, powers, perception. It's a feminine. And then there's bay leaf, which is very much around being in the world, but also the ability to connect with higher aspects. So a lot has gone into this cook. It was an epic thing. The whole cook took me about 6 hours. I was like adding ingredients, and it was very much it was very much like a potion I was making. And the whole idea, as I was doing it, as I was holding it, was the idea was I'm creating something that will embody Earth, as I'm like creating this aspect which will be the totality of Earth. And this has really come out, and a lot of people when they took it were quite surprised at how gentle it was, because with 30 levels of immortality, you might expect it to be quite strong. It was quite strong on some level in that, like when I started taking it, I just had so much energy. I suddenly decided to, instead of just walking, I started to add swimming. It's like we're always faced in life with this either or, A or B. I have the cake or the cream caramel. It's like, well, if you want to, you can have both, But this is what this did. It said, well, go for a walk and then go for a swim. Do both. You've got enough energy to do both. And, the value you get in walking and talking, and then the value you get in the personal reflection of swimming will be, both will benefit you. And this is what I've done. And ever since I've taken Gaia, I've just walked and swum every day. So it did boost my energy levels in terms of that, which was amazing. So obviously, if you're feeling more alive, you have more energy, more likely to exercise. But it also showed me that we don't necessarily need to put everything down. We can actually have things the way we pretty much want. We don't have to, like the idea of like you can't have your cake and eat it too, or if you have this, you can't have that. You can have happiness, or you can have, or you can have love, or you can have security, or you can have money, or you can have happiness. It's like, why are these two mutually exclusive? Why is this idea of like, oh, in order to have one, you have to sacrifice the other? It's like, if there's a way to have them both without hurting anyone, then surely that is the ideal. And this is what Gaia really is. It's the fullness of like on the earth at this time, everything really is possible. And if we're clever enough with our awareness, we can actually make it so that we can actually have love and happiness and money and, friends and everything at the same time. We don't have to sacrifice one for the other. The idea of like, oh, you can have a mortgage, or, you can have happiness, but like, why couldn't you pay for your house and be happy as well? This is really an error in view, I think, that somehow it's crept in somehow. But that the Gaia really, really helps us to redress this. It gives us back the sense of my world, I'm in control, I'm going to go out, I feel abundant, I feel open, I feel expansive, I feel newly returned to the world, and I'll go out in this mood of abundance and expression and live my life, live my best life. So this is, along with remedies like Immortality Vishnu, this is very much an installation remedy. So what we're doing is we're installing a new way of being, a way that is being kind of deliberately constructed to represent all the aspects of the world, right? So, well, what we're trying to do is like we're trying to generate a substance here, or what I believe I've done is generate a substance which is the embodiment of Gaia. I mean, obviously, it's not the whole planet, but it's a good example of what exists on the planet and what lives here. And how life exists as this interplay of forces, elements forming plants, plants being eaten by animals, animals dying and returning to the soil. There's the sense of like a cycle of life of which we're a part. But, what separates this is that it's a part of the immortality range. And part of that is like that the fact we don't necessarily have to die or even get old. And then what do we do with that? Like as wardens or guardians of the earth, what does that look like? What would we do? What would we create? What does that actually look like? And I would argue that this, especially at this time, is never been more important as a message to hear, but more than just to hear it, to actually ingest it, to take the remedy and like feel what that feels like. And this is why a lot of people felt like they were returning home, that they were actually incarnate here as opposed to being somewhere else. I don't know where everyone was or is, or I mean, I'm guilty of this. I'll get angry for hours before, and then I come back, where was I? Or I was dreaming, and then I wake up and I'm back. But where we go at these times, who knows? But the more time we spend here, the more we can really bring what we want into form. And I would argue that when people dig down, what makes them happy is benefiting other people and being creative and proactive and initiating projects and seeing projects come into form and doing stuff they love, raising their children, obviously, having happy and fruitful relationships with friends and partners. I mean, this is really what makes life worth living. Yes, there's the, fine French cheeses and like trips to Hawaii and all of that. But like when you break it down, if you can be completely happy in your house doing whatever you're doing, petting your cat, and you're complete in that, then there's no need for these external things. Even the material trappings of the world, like the fancy cars or the nice clothes, it's like, yes, you can have that, but that's not going to make you happy. It's like, be happy and then have that in addition if you want it, or if you've got the lifestyle that allows that to manifest. But if not, then just be happy with what you have. And this kind of, because it's simultaneously a very deep but gentle sensation, you feel held by it. And when we feel held, generally we're more likely to make the right choices, because we're not likely to go into these agitated spaces of fear or worry or concern, because we feel like we're being held by something, whether it's by the substance or the earth or community. It doesn't really matter. I just quickly want to say a few words about Gaia in relation to Asgard. Now, as Gaia is the earth, Asgard would be the sky. And it's really the meeting of these two, the going between earth and sky, that allows life to take place. Now, the image of the eagle is a good example of that. And that's why, a lot of people take a couple doses of Gaia, dose, and then a dose of Asgard. So it's like on the earth, above the earth, and getting the perspective of both the sky and the land. And the idea of the eagle as the creature that like flies up, lives on the mountains in the sky, essentially, and then it swoops down to get its prey onto the earth, and then it returns. As a messenger between the higher realms and where we are now. So this is really what we're doing with Gaia and Asgard taken together. Now, what I generally suggest is people take 4 or 5 doses over 4 or 5 days of Gaia, then a dose of Asgard, so they get to see the earth and then the sky, but as this contrasting perspective, so it's not too much of one or the other. But when we have both aspects, I think we get the ability to see what's really going on around us, as opposed to being embedded in one perspective. Because when we're embedded in one perspective, we tend to get a bit monofocus and not see what's going on. But if we can, with the eagle, and then we're on the ground eagle, like it allows us different perspectives. And from these different perspectives, we realize that perspective is everything, because from a different perspective, nothing is a problem. Or if you alter your perspective, your perception changes. So the more we can alter our perspective, the more we can see things from different angles, the less things become hopeless, or the more potential solutions we find to problems. It's not A, it's not B, but it might be C, which might be a fusion of A and B. But we wouldn't have had that perception if we were just, the ant bear, or just the creature that just lives in the sky all the time. But if the creature that comes between the two, it's able to, deal with what happens on the ground and what happens in the air. So this is what we want. And based on that, we might come up with a very different solution. We'll see the land for what it is, and we'll see, okay, this is a good place to stay or not. Whereas if we're just on the land, we might miss the overview, where we would see that would not be a good place to be, because we could see the river coming down and it might flood. So this is really how we use Gaia. We use it to initiate a state of mind. We consume it, and we're basically ingesting this feeling of earth, and the totality of what it is to be in it and on it, reflected in us as microcosms of this earth macrocosm, as bodies whereby things exist upon. They say there's more bacteria on the surface of the skin than there are people on the planet. So in a sense, we're just kind of colonized by all these tiny creatures anyway. And this is really what happens in Gaia. But by coming to a more humane relation with the earth itself, it allows us to yeah, be in a better relationship with our fellow beings and other creatures on this planet. And I think this is part of the cure going forward into the future of what needs to really happen at this point. This is Adam from Beyond Medicine. Yeah, talking about Gaia.